And here in my hometown of Poway, there are 3 elections for city council. The first is for mayor, okay? And our mayor is Steve Vaus, and he's running for reelection. And if you ever know who Steve Vaus is, he's easy to recognize. He always wears a cowboy hat, and he's something. He's a character. He's a country music singer. He's won a Grammy. He is a music promoter. His by the way, his daughter has a very nice country music career launching. Very impressive. And his son is a graduated from film school and is in the movie business. And it's a great family, great kids. And so, anyways, he's running for reelection in this town of Poway. And he won this originally in 2014, was reelected in 2018. In 2020, he ran for county supervisor and lost by the most unbelievably narrow percentages. It would had to be less than 0.1%. Yuri Bohlen, if you're still on the live stream, you could probably tell me the number. But I mean, it was unbelievable how close that election was, and he lost to Joel Anderson. So I think he was assuming he'd be in the city or county supervisor, but now he is still mayor. So now it's 2022. He's running again. And Steve Vaus is a character that a lot of people really like him, and there's a lot of people that don't like him. But as a general rule, there's more people that like him that don't like him, and that's why he was reelected in 2018. And he's going to be a favorite in this race, in my opinion. Oh yeah, so Yuri Bohlen on the live stream says he thinks Vaus lost by 282 votes in 2020. That's about right, and that was out of over 200,000 total votes cast, because I think each candidate had over 100,000 votes. I mean, it was unbelievable how close that race was. Well, he's the incumbent. And in every race, an incumbent always has an advantage. They have name recognition. They have a certain degree of, what's the right word, cachet in the community. They're looked upon as a leader because they've already been elected. They often have a lot more resources available to them, and they're more skilled as a politician. And so, generally speaking, incumbents have a huge advantage in elections. And that's true, not just at the local level, but at the state level, presidential level, it's generally true. So you've got to think that Steve Vaus is probably going to be a favorite. Now, there is growing opposition to Steve Vaus in the city of Poway because there's been so much development. There's a lot of people that are angry, and there's a lot of people that were previously sort of on the sidelines politically that are now getting engaged. And so in previous elections, I think Steve Vaus kind of had sort of in 2014, he had a really difficult race and he won because he had to beat an incumbent, which was hard. In 2018, all due respect to the candidates that ran against him, Steve Vaus won pretty comfortably. But this time, he can't take anything for granted. I think there's a lot of voters that are going to be looking at alternative candidates a lot more closely this election cycle than they have in the past. So who are the alternatives? And one of them is on the live stream right now. Yuri Bohlen is running for mayor. And Yuri ran in 2018. He was a guest here on my podcast. And Yuri, of course, you're welcome to join us again on the show. We'd love to learn more about you and learn more about your platform. But Yuri is very involved in civic affairs. You see him at city council meetings all the time. Has a very strong presence on a lot of our social media here in the town of Poway. I think Yuri is going to be competitive. I think he's going to give Steve Vaus a really healthy race. But there's other people too. Some of these I don't really know. There's a person, his or her name, I think it's a her, is Emeka Ibekwe. Forgive me if I'm not pronouncing that right. That person is running, a business owner here in Poway. Delta Esparza is running. I heard from our good friend Pete Neal. He met Delta and thinks Delta is a very good candidate. She works for a defense contractor, and she's young, but a very sharp young lady. Pete thinks that she could be potentially a good mayor in this city. And then another person, again, forgive me if I pronounce this wrong, Bhavana Kansal is a designer and business owner here in Poway. And that person is running as well. So there's 5 candidates. There's an incumbent and 4 challengers. So this will be interesting to see. Now, generally what happens here is that, and we saw this in a lot of the races in 2018, where there might have been 1 incumbent and 4 challengers, just like here. In 2018 in District 1, this happened. You have the 1 incumbent, and then the anti-incumbent vote, when it's dispersed and fragmented across 4 challengers, it kind of makes it easier for the incumbent to win because the opposition is split in pieces. Be interesting to see how this plays out. But I think Yuri has a lot more name recognition than he did in the last election. So we'll see how that goes. Now, the next race I think is also fascinating too. And this is District 1 in Poway. And, you know, Poway has been divided into districts. There's 4 districts now. And the 2018 and I think the 2020 election was part of the transition that we went through to get into a full district-wide elections. And so, you know, there's like 4 subsets of Poway. So District 1 is sort of in the kind of the central and the western part of Poway, if I'm saying that right. And the incumbent, Dave Grush, is not running, which is incredible. Like, you know, there have been rumors that he was going to step down. You know, he originally ran 3 election cycles ago and promised to have term limits of 2 terms, and then he ended up running for a 3rd and won. And Dave Grush is generally very well liked in town. He's a very nice man. He has a good heart, and he's decided to retire. So, okay. But when the incumbent steps down, then it's kind of like wide open season. And District 1 in 2018 had, remember I said, the incumbent and 4 challengers. So it kind of confused the establishment versus the anti-establishment vote. Well, now there's only 2 candidates in District 1 in Poway, and they're both very interesting candidates. Now, and I'm reading the list from from Poway.org, so this is in no priority order. Brian Pepin is one of those candidates. And generally speaking, Brian Pepin has the support of the existing city council, of the mayor, and of the 4 council people. And in fact, I think I saw all of them endorsing him on his website. Brian Pepin is a Republican, the current or former chair of the Lincoln Club, which is a downtown San Diego kind of business lobbying organization, community organization. Brian Pepin is very active politically in the Republican Party, is often assisting other candidates. He's been active in our city, being member of the Budget Review Committee, and, you know, kind of falling in line with a lot of the power structure here in Poway. So in many ways, he represents sort of the establishment of Poway, and he's being challenged by a true progressive challenger, and his name is Hiram Soto. And Hiram is a newspaper writer by trade. That he'll do the digging and uncovering facts. He likes to say that he listens to the people, and a lot of his background as a journalist can be a real asset for him. He is very active reaching out to the community. He's been extremely active on social media, whereas Brian Pepin, not as much. In fact, very little that I've seen from him on social media. So it's going to be an interesting race because now we've got 2 candidates. There's no fragmentation. You essentially have one candidate that represents sort of the establishment and one candidate that represents change. One candidate, ironically, the one candidate who represents the establishment is the one where there's been the most change in development in Poway. Brian Pepin is sort of riding that horse, whereas Hiram Soto, who is politically progressive, but not for development. I mean, he would like to see a lot less development in this town, to slow it down. And there's a lot of people in Poway that think that want to see it slowing down. So now we've got 2 guys, a real litmus test here to kind of see what the voters want. Very interesting to see what happens because there's been so much change in Poway. There's a lot of people that are really hot on this issue. So I'm fascinated with this race because there's only 2 candidates. Now, the third race is District 3, and I live in District 3. I gave a fleeting thought to running myself, but I decided there's no way. So who's running? Well, John Mullen is the incumbent. He is also retiring, or not resigning, retiring. And it's a wide open slate now. So who do you got? There's 3 people running. And in order, according to this document in front of me, Peter de Hoff is running, and we've seen his name around. He's also kind of, generally speaking, aligned with the existing power structure at City Hall. He has been a member of the Budget Review Committee. A full disclosure, I was on the Budget Review Committee in 2007 and 8 or 2006 and 7. Can't remember. It was a while ago. But Peter de Hoff is a clear supporter of Mayor Steve Vaus. I mean, he's very outspoken about it on social media. And so generally speaking, he's aligned with that power structure in many ways, similar to how Brian Pepin is. And, for the longest time, incumbents were like almost impossible to beat in Poway because generally speaking, Poway's been a fairly well-run city. But now I think there's a lot of people that would debate that point because of all the development. So, so Peter de Hoff, like Brian Pepin, they're for safety and police and fire and roads and recreation and kind of, taking care of all the meat and potatoes, the basic fundamental things that a city hall needs to do. But there's 2 challengers to Peter de Hoff. The second person on the list, who's a former guest on the John Riley Project, Tony Russo. Tony Russo is an unbelievable guy. Tony Russo ran in 2020 and wasn't successful. He's running again. Extraordinarily well-known guy in Poway. Went to school in Poway, has a ton of friends, lots of supporters. He's very visible on social media and has been for a very long time. And he's a bundle of energy. And he's a fun guy. When he came over and we had the podcast interview with him, he was enjoyable to talk to. And he has some very serious ideas, but he's not as serious as the other candidates. I mean, not saying that he's unserious, but he's just will smile a lot more and laugh a lot more and have a lot more fun along the way. But he is extraordinarily well known and has a really strong base of people that will support him no matter what, because he went to school here and he's lived here. And, he used to own the O'Harley's, which was a very popular bar and restaurant. Now it's called Players, it's down by Walmart. He's just really well-known guy. So he's going to be a formidable challenger, especially in a 3-way race where the vote can kind of get split up. And then the third person in the race is Kevin Juza. Now, some people might say that name sounds familiar. And yeah, because Kevin Juza ran for school board in 2020 in District B, which is the district I live in for the school board. And he ran a race against Ginger Couvrette, who won, and also Kimberly Garnier. Kevin Juza was the teachers union endorsed candidate. Kevin Juza wasn't successful in the 2020 election, or maybe was it 2018? It had to be 2018. Excuse me. It was 2018 because this race is 4 years later. So it's come up again. He ran in 2018 and then was unsuccessful. And then when they had the bond measure to fund more capital expenses, to build more and remodel the schools, as far as I know, I think he was the chairman or the spokesperson for that effort. So in many ways, Kevin Juza is very aligned with the educational establishment. But I think when it comes to the city council, we're going to learn more about him. Given the people that are supporting Kevin, I'm going to assume that he is a more progressive candidate rather than a more conservative candidate. But I don't know. And we're going to learn more. And I'm interested. And again, all of these candidates are welcome to join me here on the podcast. Yuri Bohlen corrected me. Yeah, it was 2018. You're right, Yuri. When Kevin ran for school board. So you've got 5 people running for mayor with an incumbent, Steve Vaus. And then the other 2 races, the incumbents have both retired. which makes the field wide open. And the interesting thing is that District 1, there's only 2 candidates, and District 3, there's 3. So I think in many ways, the so-called loyal opposition in Poway, they've sort of organized themselves to rally behind one candidate, is in District 1 for sure, because they didn't want more candidates jumping in because, that fragments the vote. So this is just setting up to be a very interesting race. And then, yeah, like in District 3, you've got 2 gentlemen that are very politically astute, politically involved in our city, of Peter Hoff and Kevin Juza. But then you have Tony Russo, who's a business person, extraordinarily well known. This is his second shot at getting involved in politics. So all 3 of those candidates have something going for them.